Welcome back. Find a comfortable position and let your body get heavy. Take a slow breath in and let it out. There's nothing you need to do right now. Know where you need to be. Tonight I have 10 stories for you. Let them wash over you. You don't need to follow along closely. Just let the words carry you. Let's begin. The morning light filtered softly through the half-drawn curtains, casting a buttery glow across the kitchen. I could smell the familiar scent of freshly brewed coffee mingling with the sweet aroma of cinnamon, a gentle reminder of the new day waiting to unfold. The kettle hummed lightly on the stove, a comforting background noise, while the sound of the clock ticking ticked away the seconds, creating a serene rhythm as I settled into my routine. I stood at the kitchen island, a well-loved wooden structure marked with the small scratches and stains of countless breakfasts and late-night snacks. Sunlight danced on the surface, and I ran my fingers over the wood, feeling the history it held. The world outside seemed to be waking up too. A pair of squirrels chased each other up a nearby tree, their playful chatter mingling with the distant sound of a lawnmower. I found myself smiling at the sight, a small reminder of the uncomplicated joys woven into the ordinary fabric of life. After pouring a steaming cup of coffee, I glanced at the calendar pinned to the wall. Today marked a year since I joined the little graphic design team at Miller & Company. It felt strange how quickly that time passed, as if I had blinked and the days melted into one another. Yet, the memories of those first apprehensive days were vivid, new faces, awkward introductions, and the way everyone seemed to know just a bit more than I did. I let out a soft chuckle as I recalled how I'd nervously fumbled through my first presentation, only to be met with encouraging nods and gentle smiles. As I set my mug down on the island, I thought about my team. Rob, who always wore striped socks that clashed with his suits. Sarah, whose laughter could fill a room and brighten the cloudiest of days. And Tom, the quiet one, with his thoughtful questions and gentle demeanor. Each personality created a comforting mosaic, and I felt a sense of gratitude for the camaraderie we'd built over shared deadlines and inside jokes. The morning passed quickly, and soon I made my way to the office, the familiar path leading me through a small cluster of shops on the way. The baker was already preparing pastries, the warm scent wafting into the air like an invitation. I couldn't help but peek inside, momentarily distracted by the sight of muffins fresh from the oven. Maybe I'd snag one later, I thought, feeling a lightness in my chest. When I reached the office, the fluorescent lights flickered on, illuminating the shared space where we all came together. The walls were adorned with vibrant prints, pieces designed by our own hands, and they radiated an energy that always put me at ease. A few team members were already settled in, and as I walked past the rows of desks, I offered a soft good morning, which was met with a chorus of replies. I noticed Sarah animatedly speaking with Rob, their heads bent together. I smiled, feeling that warmth that comes from being part of a small community. But as the day progressed, I began to sense a subtle shift in the atmosphere. There was a tension between Rob and Tom that I couldn't quite pinpoint, a fleeting frown on Rob's face when Tom reached for a shared resource on the table. It was as if an invisible thread was pulling tighter, stitching a line of unspoken words between them. And in the cozy space that usually thrummed with laughter, I could almost hear the silence where the camaraderie used to flourish. I tried to brush it aside, focusing on my own work, but the curious tension kept nudging at the back of my mind. At lunch, I could see Tom sitting with his head down, lost in his meal, while Rob paced near the window, rubbing the back of his neck. I wanted to approach them, to lighten the mood with something playful, or perhaps a shared joke. But something held me back. Instead, I quietly sipped my soup, the warm broth soothing but not distracting me from the quiet worry. Later, as I settled back at my desk, I found myself wondering if perhaps I should say something. Maybe I could bridge that silent gap, bring some clarity to whatever had passed between them. I recalled the time Sarah had diffused a similar situation with just a lighthearted question. It seemed so simple then, yet here I was, paralyzed by the unknown. My fingers idly typed, forming designs on the screen as I tried to pull my focus back to my work. Time drifted on, and the clock ticked steadily towards the end of the day. As the sunset painted the sky in hues of pink and gold, I realized it was now or never. I took a deep breath, feeling the air fill my lungs and steady my resolve, and walked toward the break room, where I found both Rob and Tom chatting quietly. They looked up as I entered, and I offered a smile, hoping to break the ice. "Hey, is everything okay?" I ventured, leaning against the counter, my heart pounding softly in my chest. There was a tiny moment of hesitation, and I could see Tom's brow furrow slightly. But then Rob let out a soft breath, a small laugh escaping him, which eased the tension in the room. "Nothing we can't handle. Just some miscommunication about the project deadlines," he said, his voice carrying an easy warmth. "But I think we've got it worked out now." I felt the weight in my chest lighten just a fraction. "That's good to hear." I tried to keep my tone light, maintaining that gentle rhythm. "You know, if there's anything you two need help with, I'm just a desk away." "Thanks, I appreciate that," Tom said, and just like that, the air began to shift. The thread of unease loosening as we talked about the project, our discussions weaving back into the tapestry of teamwork that had colored our days together. As I settled back at my desk after the conversation, I found myself reflecting on how easy it is for misunderstandings to arise in the quiet spaces between words. It's delicate, how one moment can feel tense in a world that thrives on connection. I allowed myself a soft smile as I thought about the simple solutions that often lie just beneath the surface, waiting to be discovered. The day wound down gently. The last golden rays of sunlight slipped through the window as I tidied up my workspace, the comforting hum of the computer and the soft rustle of papers surrounding me. The warmth of camaraderie, the laughter and sharing of ideas, and the quiet understanding that had emerged from a small conversation. As I closed my laptop, I noticed the team had begun to gather near the coffee machine, the sound of laughter spilling into the air, a reminder of the bond we shared. I joined them, pouring myself a final cup of coffee, the rich aroma soothing as we talked about our plans for the weekend, the shared smiles and light banter, washing over any remaining tensions like a gentle wave. And just like that, I felt grateful for the community we had created. I could see how our little misunderstandings were part of the intricate dance of being together, and that a simple conversation could reset the rhythm once more. As I finally made my way out, the evening air caressed my face, cool and refreshing. The stars began to twinkle in the twilight sky, and I took a moment to breathe deeply, feeling a peacefulness settling like a soft quilt over my heart. Each step home felt light, each breath easy, as I reflected on the small joys of the day. The laughter, the connections, the little moments of understanding. When I finally stepped inside my home, the soft light of my lamp welcomed me, inviting me into the cozy space where I could let go of the day. The coffee pot had left its warm scent behind in the kitchen, mingling with the faint sweetness of cinnamon from my breakfast. I kicked off my shoes and felt the cool floor beneath my feet, a comforting contrast grounding me in the stillness of the evening. As I pulled the blanket around my shoulders while settling onto the couch, I felt the gentle weight of contentment settle within me. The world outside quieted, and as I turned off the lamp, the room enveloped me in a serene darkness. Every small sound, the rustle of the leaves, the chirping of crickets, felt like a lullaby, wrapping around me as I closed my eyes, carried off into a peaceful sleep. Close your eyes and settle in for this one. The world was quiet that evening, wrapped delicately in the soft embrace of twilight as I stepped into the little cafe on the corner of Maple Street. The scent of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the earthy aroma of baked goods, filling the air with a warmth that felt like a gentle hug. Outside, the streetlights flickered on, casting a golden glow that danced across the rain-kissed pavement. I remember the way the pavement shimmered, glistening like a carpet of tiny stars, each droplet a whisper of the day slowly fading away. Inside, the cafe was softly illuminated, the amber light pooling around mismatched chairs and small wooden tables, each bearing the marks of countless stories shared over steaming cups and warm pastries. I settled into a corner nook, where the fabric of the chair cradled me like an old friend, and I could hear the quiet clinking of ceramic mugs and soft laughter weaving through the air. It was one of those everyday moments that felt both ordinary and extraordinary, as if life itself was unfolding in slow motion, revealing its beauty in the tiniest of details. I had come to the cafe to retreat from the busyness of the world, my mind a swirl of thoughts and lingering worries. I watched as the barista, a young woman with a cascade of curls, moved rhythmically behind the counter, her hands deftly crafting drinks. I noticed the way her smile reached her eyes, and how each sip she handed to the customers seemed to carry with it a bit of joy. The gentle hum of conversations, punctuated by bursts of laughter, floated around me like a comforting cocoon. As I wrapped my fingers around the warm mug, the warmth seeped into my palms, grounding me in the moment. I took a deep breath, letting the mingling scents of vanilla and coffee wash over me, and closed my eyes for a moment, relishing in the soft murmur that enveloped the cafe. It was in that space of stillness, however fleeting, that I felt the heaviness of my day begin to lift, if only just a little. After a while, I decided to treat myself to a slice of cake. I ambled over to the glass display case where an array of delightful desserts shimmered under the soft lights, each one more tempting than the last. There were rich chocolate cakes, delicate fruit tarts, and a decadent cheesecake that seemed to whisper my name. I finally settled on a slice of lemon drizzle cake, its light, zesty flavor promising a refreshing contrast to my day. As I turned to head back to my table, I spotted a man sitting alone at the next table. His gentle expression focused on a book. He had silver hair that glimmered like moonlight and glasses perched on his nose, giving him a look of quiet wisdom. With a friendly nod, I returned to my seat, placing the slice of cake before me. I took a moment to savor the first bite, the citrusy tang brightening my senses. Just then, the man glanced over, his eyes crinkling at the corners as he caught my gaze. "Lemon drizzle, eh?" he said with a warmth that radiated across the space between us. "Good choice. It's like a little burst of sunshine on a plate." No, I couldn't help but smile back, feeling the ease that often comes with sharing a moment with a stranger. "I've heard it's the best here," I replied. Wanted to see if the rumors were true. We exchanged small talk for a while, the conversation flowing effortlessly like the gentle stream that ran through the park nearby. He told me about his love for reading, his favorite authors, and how he had recently taken up writing poetry. I shared stories about my own writing ambitions, how words sometimes felt like elusive butterflies that danced just out of reach. Our laughter mingled, creating a soft melody amid the cafe's symphony of sounds. As our conversation continued, I noticed the way he spoke, his words laced with humor and kindness, each sentence like a gentle nudge to my spirit. I found comfort in our exchange, sharing pieces of ourselves with no pretense, just two souls finding solace in a shared space. The worries that had loomed over me earlier began to retreat, replaced by the warmth of connection that blossomed in that cozy nook. Then, the unexpected happened. As I lifted my mug for another sip of coffee, I felt a sudden weight on the table. The man had placed a small envelope beside my plate, his eyes sparkling with mischief. "This is for you," he said, his voice soft yet playful, as if he were sharing a secret. I looked at the envelope, puzzled. "For me? But why?" "No. See." He shrugged, a kind smile lighting his features. "Just a little something to brighten your day. You were a good listener, and I appreciate that. Plus, I can always use an excuse to spread a little kindness." You know. Curiosity tingled through me as I opened the envelope, revealing a small note and a gift card for the cafe. The note was simple, yet it struck a chord deep within me, to remind you that there's magic in the little things. "Keep dreaming." Nice. I smiled, a flutter of warmth blooming in my chest. It was such a small gesture, yet it felt monumental in its kindness. I glanced up to thank him, but he waved it off with a gentle laugh, his eyes crinkling again. No need for thanks. Just pay it forward when you can. Nine. As I sat there, digesting not just the cake, but the little moment of positivity, I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me. Here was a stranger, sharing a sliver of his world with me, reminding me that kindness exists just around the corner, waiting to be noticed. Our conversation resumed, flowing like the soft breeze that drifted in through the open window, carrying with it the faint scent of blooming jasmine from the garden outside. Time seemed to slow, the edges of the world blurring as I lost myself in the connection we shared. The cafe felt like a sanctuary, a place where thoughts could drift, and smiles could linger just a little longer. And then, the evening deepened, the cafe beginning to quiet down as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of violet and gold. With the last sip of coffee warming my belly, the conversation gradually waned, a comfortable silence enveloping us like a soft blanket. I watched as he wrapped up his book, tucking it into his bag with care. Time in that cozy corner of the cafe had passed like a gentle stream, flowing effortlessly, weaving memories that would linger long after I had left. I felt an overwhelming sense of calm. Even as the worries of life nudged at the edges of my mind, the kind encounter had etched a small smile on my heart, a reminder of the beauty that can be found in unexpected places. It was time to part ways, but not without a final exchange of warm smiles, and a quiet promise to carry a little bit of that kindness forward into the world. As I stepped back onto the rain-drenched street, the cool air brushed against my cheeks, a refreshing contrast to the warmth I carried inside. The cafe lights glowed softly behind me, and I turned for one last look, a sense of peace settling over me. The quiet moments, the gentle encounters, they always have a way of echoing back, don't they? I took a deep breath, feeling the air fill my lungs, grounding me in the present. Each step I took felt both lighter and more purposeful, as if I was walking on a path illuminated by the small flickers of kindness I had encountered that evening. And now, as I allow myself to pull back into the comfort of home, the soft candlelight casts a gentle glow across the room. I tuck myself into the embrace of my blankets, the rhythm of the world outside settling into a lullaby. I close my eyes, a smile lingering on my lips, grateful for the moments that bring us together, however fleeting. It is there, in the stillness, that I allow myself to drift softly into dreams, held in the warmth of unexpected kindness and the beauty of an ordinary evening. And now, our next story. The rain began to fall softly, tapping a gentle rhythm against the window panes of the small cafe where I had found refuge. It was a familiar spot, the kind of place that felt like a warm embrace on a gray day. The air was thick with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingling with sweet pastries, creating a comforting blend that wrapped around me. I could hear the low hum of conversation, punctuated by the soft clinking of cups and the occasional burst of laughter. The lighting was soft, casting a warm glow that made everything seem just a little more inviting. As I settled into my favorite corner nook, I took a moment to appreciate the view outside. Raindrops raced down the glass, making little rivulets that twisted and turned like tiny rivers. It was one of those cozy afternoons that seemed to slow down time, an invitation to breathe a little deeper, to linger a little longer. I ordered a latte, its creaminess bringing a smile to my face as the barista, with her bright eyes and easy laugh, handed it to me with a sprinkle of cocoa on top. This cafe was a shared sanctuary for many, a place where the outside world felt distant, almost irrelevant. I often came here after work, escaping the bustling office and its unending demands. My job was in a small marketing firm, an unassuming building nestled between a bakery and a vintage record shop. Even as I stepped into the professional world with its contracts and deadlines, I found my way back to this cafe, where I could unwind and recharge. As I sipped my latte, I recalled my office, This little ecosystem buzzing with creativity, ideas blooming like the flowers in spring. Most days, it was an enjoyable space. However, there was one shadow that loomed, a coworker named Leo. He had a knack for turning even the simplest tasks into dramas. His tendency to take credit for others' work was infamous. It was a soft injustice, the kind that felt all too familiar, yet often brushed aside. I had witnessed it time and again, watching as he would claim the spotlight without so much as a glance back at the team that had supported him. There were whispers in the office, frustration bubbling under the surface, but it was an unspoken rule that we all avoided confrontation. I had learned to let the small things slide, reminding myself that sometimes people act out of insecurity. But as days turned into weeks, the weight of it began to settle heavily in my chest. One overcast Tuesday afternoon, the team had gathered in the conference room for what was supposed to be a celebratory meeting. We'd been working tirelessly on a project, one that had drawn in long hours and late nights. As we settled into our seats, there was a palpable sense of camaraderie in the air, tinged with excitement for a job well done. I couldn't help but feel a warmth radiating from the group, an understanding woven among us through shared effort. Leo arrived late as usual and immediately commanded attention. I watched as he launched into a presentation about the project, seamlessly weaving in his own accolades. Self-congratulatory remarks that left a sour taste in my mouth. I could feel the tension rising in the room, but nobody spoke up. Instead, we exchanged furtive glances, our shared discontent unvoiced but understood. As he continued, I felt a surge of determination. It was time, I realized, to quietly reclaim our voices. I knew that what we had created together deserved recognition, and so did my friends and colleagues. So, as Leo wrapped up his presentation and the room erupted into polite applause, I decided to gently interject. With a calmness I didn't quite feel, I stood up, smoothing down the front of my dress as I did. "You know," I began, "a lot of us contributed to this project." I could feel my heart thumping in my chest, the eyes of my coworkers flicking toward me, a sense of surprise mixing with anticipation. The late nights, the brainstorming sessions, the revisions, we all put so much into it. I think it's important to acknowledge everyone who was involved. Nayan, by saying. The room held its breath for a moment. I could see Leah's expression shift, first surprise, then annoyance, as the tension hung palpably in the air. But instead of backing down, I pressed on, my voice steady. It was a team effort after all. Each of us brought something unique to the table, and that really made the difference. One by one, my colleagues started to chip in, echoing their agreement. "That's right," one of them said softly. "It was a group effort." Another added, "We brainstormed those ideas together." Each voice built upon the last, a gentle but decisive tide rising against Leo's self-promotion. I could see Leo trying to regain control of the narrative, but the momentum had shifted. There was a warmth in the room as my peers spoke up, the camaraderie fueling a quiet spirit of resilience. Laughter bubbled up as we reminisced about those late nights, the takeout food, the tired but happy faces, the way we'd supported each other through every twist and turn of the project. Eventually, Leo sat back down, his facade cracking just a little. The dynamic had changed, not in an aggressive way, but in a way that felt hopeful. It was as if we had collectively exhaled, returning to the comfort of our shared reality, reclaiming our small victories. As I walked back to my desk after the meeting, I felt lighter. The rain continued to patter against the window, and I could hear its soothing drumming echoing faintly, as if it had accompanied us through every moment of the meeting. There was still work to be done, challenges ahead, but for now we had found a small victory, a gentle reminder that we were all in this journey together. The following weeks held a new sense of ease. People smiled more freely, laughter echoed in the halls, and there was a renewed appreciation for one another. I never spoke of the meeting again, but there was an unspoken understanding that lingered in the air, a kindness woven into our workplace tapestry. Eventually, the sun broke through the clouds, illuminating everything in a soft, golden glow. I settled back into my favorite corner at the cafe, letting the memory drift like the steam rising from my cup. I closed my eyes briefly, allowing the warmth of the latte to seep into my hands. And with it, an overwhelming sense of peace washed over me. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving a glistening world refreshed and renewed. As the cafe grew quieter, the hum of conversation fading into soft murmurs, I took a deep breath. Here in this cozy nook, I felt grounded and whole, cradled by the light. The world outside felt manageable now, and as the last rays of sunset painted the sky with hues of pink and gold, I knew I was home. The gentle clinking of cups in the cafe became a lullaby, and I leaned back in my chair, a soft smile on my lips. The warmth of those moments lingered, wrapping around me like a comforting blanket, pulling me gently into the stillness that awaited. Take a deep breath, and let's move on to the next one. I remember one evening, the kind that whispers of early autumn, when the air felt like a soft embrace. Warm yet just crisp enough to suggest that summer was reluctantly retreating. I had come home from a long day, the sweet scent of baked apples lingering in the air from the pie my neighbor, Mrs. Hartley, had placed on my doorstep earlier that afternoon. The kitchen, dimly lit by a single overhead lamp, was infused with the warmth of the golden sunset filtering through the window. The walls seemed to hold the sound of a gentle breeze rustling the leaves outside, creating a gentle rustle that blended perfectly with the aroma of cinnamon. I kicked off my shoes, relishing the cool wooden floor beneath my feet, and made my way to the counter, where I noticed a half-finished cup of tea cooling slowly. The steam, faint and fading, curled upward in delicate wisps, almost like a gentle farewell. I took a sip, savoring the comforting warmth that spread through me, and smiled at the thought of snuggling into the couch soon, perhaps with a blanket and a good book. There was a sense of peace that evening, a soft lull that begged for me to slow down, breathe deeper, and let the worry of the day melt away. As I settled into my favorite corner of the couch, my phone buzzed gently against the coffee table. A message from my friend Alex. We had made plans earlier in the week to get together for dinner, and I could already taste the homemade pasta he had promised to make. His messages were always a mix of enthusiasm and a touch of mischief. And this one was no different. Are you ready for tonight? Remember, bring the special sauce. I furrowed my brow for a moment, confused. What special sauce? Had I forgotten something crucial? I racked my brain, trying to recall the elusive sauce he'd referenced. It didn't take long before an image popped into my head. An old ketchup bottle with a couple of doodles and a label that read, "Secret Sauce." Alex and I had concocted it during one of our late-night cooking experiments a few months back. The taste had been surprisingly delightful, but as I often told him, it was hardly special. Still, I wanted to be a good friend. I hurried back to the kitchen, rummaging through the fridge where I found some leftover condiments, the ketchup sitting there like an old friend, grinning up at me. I poured the last bit into a small container, feeling a little silly. What happened to it being a secret? I chuckled softly to myself as I added a few extra spices just for good measure, hoping perhaps to elevate this concoction to something resembling culinary art. Once ready, I placed the small container safely in my bag, smiling with a touch of pride for having completed my mission. The sun had dipped below the horizon by the time I arrived at Alex's house, painting the sky in rich shades of purple and orange. I approached his door, feeling the comforting familiarity of his home wash over me as I knocked gently. Alex opened the door, his face lighting up with a huge grin as he welcomed me inside. "There you are. I've been waiting. And I see you brought the sauce." "Man." I handed him the little container like it was a trophy. "Here it is." "The special sauce," I said, trying to muster up some enthusiasm. He looked at it for a moment, his expression shifting from excitement to confusion. Yeah. About that," he said, scratching his head. I think there's been a mix-up. As he led me toward the kitchen, I noticed the table beautifully set, with steaming plates of pasta, waiting in all their glorious splendor. But my eyes were drawn to the center, where a large bowl filled with a vibrant green pesto sat. My gut dropped as I realized what had happened. Wait. You mean that was the special sauce? Nigel. Yep. My grandma's famous pesto recipe. I texted you about it. You know, the one we used last time? Nani. A mix of embarrassment and a chuckle bubbled up inside of me as I recalled my own misinterpretation. I thought you meant the ketchup. You know, the secret sauce we made? I gestured with a slight laugh, and he joined in, shaking his head as he tried to contain the amusement. Now talk would have been a twist, wouldn't it? He said, leaning against the counter, laughter dancing in his eyes. Why didn't I just specify? I mean, who wouldn't want to elevate a pasta dish with a little bit of ketchup and mystery? Oh no, ways. As we both burst into laughter, the tension dissipated effortlessly, and I realized how grateful I was for our friendship and the laughter that came with it. It didn't matter that I had misunderstood. What mattered was the warmth in the room, the delicious food, and the delightful company. We dug into the meal, savoring each bite of the creamy pasta and fragrant pesto. Our conversation flowed easily, filled with stories, playful banter, and the joy that comes from being comfortable with one another. The room was filled with the sound of laughter, the clinking of forks, and the low hum of the evening settling into a cozy rhythm. Eventually, as plates were emptied and stories began to drift into silence, it felt like time itself slowed down. I glanced around at the familiar surroundings, the warm glow of the kitchen light, the kitchen window softly lit by the crescent moon outside, which cast shimmering silver shadows across our plates. In that moment, I felt a profound sense of belonging, a comforting realization that despite the little mix-up, everything had turned out just fine. As we cleaned up, I looked at Alex, who was holding the now empty container of pesto. So, what do you think? Do you feel like we should ditch the ketchup for good? He asked playfully. I chuckled, smoothing my hands over the countertop, enjoying the rhythm of the dishwashing, the familiarity of our banter. Oh, I think both have their merits. Maybe we can have a special sauce night every now and then. Daddy. The laughter echoed softly in the kitchen, wrapping around us like a cozy blanket, making it feel as if time had paused just for us. After a while, the dishes were clean and the kitchen returned to its serene state, a comforting calm enveloping us as we settled down into the living room. We sank back into the couch, the cushions cradling us in their softness, and for a moment, I closed my eyes, listening to the quiet rhythm of the house, the gentle sounds of the world outside. There, in that peaceful embrace, I felt the warmth of friendship and the simple joy of shared moments. As the evening progressed, our conversation began to quiet, the gentle hum of our voices fading into a soothing lull. I felt myself relax deeper and deeper into the cushions, the weight of the day slipping away with every breath. Alex's laughter and warmth surrounded me, and I let myself linger in that space of comfort and ease, the memories of the evening sweetening like the last moments of daylight. Before long, a gentle stillness settled in the room, the kind that cradles you softly, whispers of rest, weaving their way through the air. I could feel my eyelids growing heavy, each blink becoming longer, as if the warmth of the room was encouraging me to embrace the quiet. When I finally opened my eyes, I found myself alone in my thoughts, the world outside dimming to a soft glow. I took a deep breath, feeling the contentment seep into my bones, grateful for the laughter shared, and the simple connection forged in that cozy kitchen. As I lay back, pulling the blanket up to my chin, I could hear the gentle sounds of the night enveloping my home. Outside, the night sky had wrapped itself in a velvety blanket, the stars twinkling softly as if they, too, were sharing in the warmth of the evening's memories. With one last deep breath, I welcomed the stillness, cozy and serene, and surrendered to the soothing embrace of sleep. Take a deep breath, and let's move on to the next one. I remember the late afternoon light filtering softly through the kitchen window, casting gentle shadows across the pale blue walls. It was one of those cozy spaces where the scent of cinnamon lingered in the air, mingling with the unmistakable aroma of fresh coffee brewing in the pot. Outside, the sky was a canvas of muted grays, hinting at rain but still holding back, like a shy child peeking out from behind a curtain. I could hear the faint sound of rustling leaves as the wind played a quiet symphony in the trees. The world felt slow, almost dreamlike. In that inviting kitchen, I busied myself with the simple ritual of preparing dinner, a comforting pot of vegetable soup, the kind that warms you from the inside out. I chopped onions, their sharpness bringing a slight sting to my eyes, and the morning's remnants of chopped carrots and potatoes lay waiting on the counter, each piece coated with a thin sheen of moisture. As I stirred the bubbling mixture, I could hear the soft patter of rain beginning to fall outside, a gentle percussion that matched the rhythm of my heart. And there he was, Sam, my neighbor, appearing at the doorway with his usual shy smile, the one that made his green eyes crinkle at the corners. We had become friends over the past few months, an unexpected twist in our lives that had revealed itself gradually, like the slow unfurling of a flower petal. He stood there, a bit hesitant, clutching a small tin of homemade biscuits, a gesture that warmed my heart more than the stove could ever do. "I thought you might like some," he said, his voice soft and tinged with a hint of uncertainty. There was a gentle cadence to the way he spoke, as if he was measuring each word before letting it slip into the air. I nodded, inviting him in with a smile, the kind that felt like an invitation to share an unspoken secret. The kitchen, usually a sanctuary for me, felt different with him there, the air charged with a sweet anticipation. As Sam stepped inside, the cozy glow of the overhead light cast a soft halo around him, illuminating the warm undertones of his brown hair. It was in these quiet moments that I found myself noticing the little things. The way he tucked his hands into the pockets of his worn jeans, how he brushed back a stray strand of hair that had fallen across his forehead. We settled into a comfortable rhythm as we chatted about our week, punctuated by the rhythmic chopping of vegetables and the occasional bubbling sound from the pot on the stove. The conversation flowed easily, like a meandering stream, revealing the nuances of our lives. We shared stories of childhood, of books we loved, and the small obsessions that colored our days, like the way he meticulously tended to the tiny herb garden on his balcony, each leaf a testament to his patience and care. With each shared laugh, I felt a warmth blossom in my chest, a glow that spread outward and curled around the edges of my consciousness. He had a way of looking at me that made the ordinary feel extraordinary, his gaze steady and sincere, as if he could see right through to the heart of me. Then there was a moment, a brief pause in our conversation, where the sounds of the kitchen faded into the background. The rain had picked up, drumming softly against the window, creating a soothing rhythm that seemed to weave us closer together. I noticed a tiny droplet racing down the glass, its journey a small adventure of its own. Sam caught my gaze and smiled, a softness in his eyes that made my heart flutter. A small recognition, a shared understanding that sprung to life in that fleeting second. Rather uncharacteristically for me, I found myself leaning a little closer to him as we spoke, the distance between us shrinking into mere inches. It felt surprisingly easy, like breathing in unison with a melody that had always been there, waiting for us to acknowledge it. The air between us grew thicker, charged with a warmth that made the kitchen feel even cozier than before. As the sun began to sink lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the room, I ladled soup into two mismatched bowls, the steam curling upwards and wrapping around us like a warm cocoon. We sat at the kitchen table, the light flickering gently, illuminating our faces in a warm glow. Each spoonful of the soup felt like sharing a secret, a little piece of comfort that each of us savored, the solitude of our separate lives momentarily forgot. I allowed myself to drift into the rhythm of the moment, the sounds of his laughter mingling with the rain, the fragrant steam from the soup swirling around us. It made me feel safe, the kind of warmth that seeps into your bones and whispers that everything will be okay. It was in those quiet exchanges that I realized how fond I had grown of him, of our evenings together spent in hushed companionship, where words flowed like water, free and unencumbered. Somewhere between the last spoonful of soup and the soft thud of a biscuit tin being set on the table, a quiet understanding settled like a blanket over us. We remained in that space, nestled in the comfort of each other's presence, sharing stories and laughter, the rain outside transforming into a soothing backdrop to our evening. As the raindrops danced down the window, I couldn't help but wonder if he could sense the shift, too, the subtle yet undeniable connection that seemed to envelop us. The world outside faded into a blur, leaving just the two of us in our cozy little bubble, where time felt suspended, and the worries of the day melted away like snow in sunlight. Finally, after a moment of laughter that hung in the air like a sweet melody, he spoke quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. "You know, I never anticipated feeling so comfortable here. With you, with you." There was a gentleness in his tone, a sincerity that wrapped around my heart, making it leap just slightly. I felt my cheeks warm in response, the kind of warmth that is both nerve-wracking and delightful, like a fire crackling in a fireplace. "I didn't expect it either," I admitted softly, reveling in the mutual acknowledgement. It was the truth, spoken into the gentle embrace of the evening. I could see his smile growing broader, lighting up his face and washing away those small moments of hesitation we had both worn as armor. As we shared the biscuits he had brought, the sweetness of the moment lingered in the air long after we had savored each bite, the flavors mingling with the warmth of companionship. And just like the rain that had drummed away outside, I felt a sense of calm enveloping us, letting the quietude settle in, along with the realization that sometimes gentle connections like ours flourish in the unlikeliest of places. The evening stretched on, and moments passed like lazy clouds drifting through a soft blue sky. Conversation flowed seamlessly, punctuated by laughter, and at times, comfortable silences that held their own magic. I could hear the soft crackle of the rain against the window, a lullaby that curled around us, urging my eyelids to grow heavy. Eventually, we found ourselves gravitating away from the table and into the cozy nook by the window, where a well-worn couch beckoned us to sink into its embrace. The rain continued its soft descent, and we huddled close together, basking in the sweetness of the moment. As he reached for a book from the nearby shelf, I felt the warmth of our companionship wrapping around us, more comforting than the thick blanket draped across our laps. In those quiet moments, surrounded by the soft patter of rain and the gentle glow of the dim lamps, I drifted into a comfortable space where the world felt far away. Sam's voice became a soft backdrop of sound as he read aloud, his words floating in the air like delicate feathers. I listened, letting the cadence of his speech wash over me, the soothing rhythm weaving a spell that made it difficult to stay awake. Time became a fluid entity, and as I nestled deeper into the couch cushions, I felt our connection enveloping me like a warm embrace. The rain tapped a steady rhythm against the window, a soft punctuation to the ebb and flow of the evening, urging me to let go of my thoughts and sink into the comforting depths of the moment. As Sam's voice carried on, I surrendered to the warmth around us, the feeling that everything was just as it should be. Our breaths fell into sync, a gentle rise and fall that echoed the steady cadence of the rain outside, and I felt the pull of sleep drawing me closer, embracing me with a sense of peace I had longed for. Eventually, his voice faded into a soft hum, and my eyelids grew heavier, the light around us dimming until all that remained was a soft glow. The world fell silent as I quietly succumbed to the soothing depths of slumber, the warmth of that evening lingering in my heart as I drifted off, knowing that in the gentle embrace of our connection, everything would be okay. Take a deep breath, and let's move on to the next one. Autumn wrapped around the small town like a soft, worn blanket, and the leaves whispered secrets as they danced down the sidewalk. I remember the crispness in the air, that kind of refreshing chill that made the world feel just a little bit more alive. The streets were lined with trees, their branches decorated in hues of gold and crimson, casting strange, beautiful shadows across the pavement. As I stepped outside, the crunch of fallen leaves beneath my sneakers was a soothing rhythm that accompanied my meandering stroll. I had taken to walking in the late afternoons, looking for a gentle escape from the whirl of my thoughts. The sun hung low in the sky, casting everything in a soft, golden light, and the faint aroma of baked goods wafted from a nearby cafe. I could almost taste the warm cinnamon mingling with the earthy scent of damp soil. It was on those walks that I felt my mind begin to settle, like the dust in an old room finally finding its place. On one such afternoon, I found myself wandering toward the little park at the end of Elm Street. The swings creaked in the breeze, a gentle lullaby, while a group of children chased each other around the playground, their laughter a warm embrace of innocence. I paused for a moment, leaning against a weathered wooden fence, watching them with a small, wistful smile on my face. The joy they found in the simplest things, like the thrill of a swing or the joy of a game, hit something deep within me, something that yearned for a bit of that carefree spirit. Recently, I had made a decision that felt monumental at the time, yet as I stood there, surrounded by the laughter of the children, I found myself questioning it. There had been a job opportunity, one that promised excitement and a fresh start. Yet it had meant leaving my small town, leaving behind friends who had rooted me during the ups and downs of life. The prospect of more money, more status, had danced enticingly in front of me. But the thought of packing up, of saying goodbye to the familiar, felt heavy in my chest. I took a deep breath, allowing the cool air to fill my lungs and let my thoughts drift. It was a simple moment, really. The way the sun illuminated the park, how the leaves rustled gently in the breeze, the sweet sounds of laughter. It all felt like a reminder that perhaps I was searching for something I already had. The warmth of companionship, the beauty of this town I called home, the little rituals that made up my day, they were precious in their own right. As I turned to leave the park, I noticed the old oak tree standing tall at its center, its branches sprawling like open arms. Just a few yards away, a couple of kids scrambled up its gnarled roots, their laughter bubbling over as they reached for the lowest branch. There was something magical about that tree, a witness to countless memories, and I felt a twinge of nostalgia wash over me. I scratched my head, parting my hair as I thought of the countless afternoons I had spent there, swinging high above the ground or sharing secrets with childhood friends. When I finally turned back toward home, a sense of clarity began to unfurl within me. The decision I had wrestled with for weeks felt less like an insurmountable wall, and more like a gentle slope, guiding me back to where I belong. I thought of how I would miss the Saturday mornings spent at Millie's diner with friends, the way our chatter filled the air like an old song, and the laughter shared over breakfast while the smell of greasy bacon and fresh coffee hung around us like a warm hug. As the sun dipped lower, the sky blended into a tapestry of purples and oranges, and the streetlights blinked to life, casting a soft glow across the pavement. I felt a small smile creep onto my lips, a secret realization settling comfortably in my heart. Maybe choosing to stay didn't mean giving up something. Perhaps it meant embracing what I had and nurturing it into something even better. That evening, I returned home, the door creaking like an old friend as I stepped inside. The familiar scent of lavender from the candles I had lit earlier drifted through the air, intertwining with the smell of the simmering soup I had prepared before heading out. I felt a sense of peace wash over me as I perched on the edge of my well-worn couch, a favorite spot where I had spent too many evenings lost in books or wrapped up in daydreams. With a gentle sigh, I wrapped my fingers around a warm mug filled with chamomile tea its steam curling delicately into the air. I let the warmth seep into my palms, letting it ground me in the present moment. As I sipped the soothing brew, the world outside faded into a quiet hum, and I found comfort in the stillness that enveloped my home. In those little moments, I realized, was where life flourished. The laughter of children at the park, the inviting waft of cinnamon from the cafe, the peaceful embrace of the old oak tree. The ordinary held extraordinary beauty when viewed with an open heart. As I settled deeper into my cozy nook, I felt gratitude for the quieter path I had chosen, one that allowed me to grow and nurture the roots I had planted here. And slowly, as the night wrapped around the town like a soft blanket, I let my eyes close, welcoming the peaceful dreams that awaited. The gentle rhythm of my breath matched the quiet of the night outside, a lullaby whispered to the stars, and I drifted away, knowing that I was exactly where I needed to be. The world was perfectly manageable, and tomorrow would hold its own kind of beauty, ready to be discovered, one small moment at a time. Close your eyes and settle in for this one. The sun was low in the sky, casting a golden glow that filtered through the leaves of the old oak tree in my backyard, which felt like a secret guardian over my small, unassuming house. I sat at the wooden picnic table, its surface slightly rough but familiar beneath my fingers, with a steaming cup of chamomile tea cradled in my hands. The air was still warm, a gentle reminder of summer's lingering embrace, despite the whispers of autumn approaching. As I took a slow sip, the sweet floral notes danced on my tongue, soothing me in a way that mirrored the warmth of the sun on my skin. The garden around me was bursting with life, a riot of colors where marigolds and zinnias swayed gently in the soft breeze, their sweet scent mingling with the faint crispness of fallen leaves. It was a peaceful afternoon, the kind that welcomed quiet contemplation and the simple pleasures of life. I glanced at the bird feeder hanging nearby, where a pair of cheerful finches flitted in and out, their small bodies bouncing with delight as they feasted on seeds. And just beyond them, I could hear the distant laughter of children playing, their joy echoing like sweet music against the backdrop of rustling leaves. It was in this tranquil setting that I found myself reflecting on the little annoyances that punctuated everyday life. It wasn't that I was particularly troubled. It was just one of those weeks where I felt the world had conspired to nudge me ever so slightly out of my comfort zone. Nothing too serious, really. Just a series of small, irritating events that piled up like leaves waiting to be raked. My neighbor, Mr. Thompson, had taken it upon himself to re-establish his prized lawn, and in his enthusiasm he had mistakenly assumed that my garden was a suitable place to deposit the excess dirt from his projects. At first I tried to overlook it. I mean, it was just a little dirt, really. But then he'd continued to pile it higher and higher, as if my garden had suddenly transformed into his very own dumping grounds. The nerve! A part of me wanted to knock on his door, to point out that while his lawn might be the envy of the neighborhood, my own little patch of plants deserved respect too. But instead, I opted for the path of patience and silence, letting each irritation wash over me as I sipped my tea, moving through the ensuing interactions as if in slow motion. I could almost see dear old Mr. Thompson now, clad in his plaid gardening shirt and oversized sun hat, with that casual wave of his that seemed to say, "I'm just a humble gardener, ignoring your very obvious displeasure." So, as I basked in the afternoon light, an idea began to bloom, soft at first, then growing brighter, like the colors of the summer sunset. It was a couple of days later, on a pleasant Saturday morning, that I decided to execute my plan. Armed with a set of sturdy garden gloves and a wide, mischievous grin, I ventured out to my yard. Mr. Thompson had just completed another round of dirt moving, puffing out like a proud peacock as he admired his work. I knew my chance had arrived. I began to take inventory of my prized plants, those hardy sunflowers and delicate petunias standing tall in the midst of the chaos. After a half hour of meticulous planning, I pulled a few random weeds and placed them carefully on the edge of Mr. Thompson's freshly dug dirt pile. I stepped back and admired the effect. It was a small act of rebellion, a playful nudge rather than a harsh retaliation. I could almost hear the laughter of the finches around me as I imagined Mr. Thompson's face when he discovered my subtle addition. Perhaps he would take that extra moment to think twice about his tendency to encroach upon my space. I finished my tea and basked in the sunshine, knowing full well what would happen next. The following week came, still warm but with a whisper of autumn in the air. I could feel the familiar anticipation in my chest, the kind that dances lightly at the thought of a little mischief. I watched from my kitchen window, the sunlight glinting off the dishes as I washed them. I caught glimpses of Mr. Thompson examining my handiwork, his brow furrowing as he noticed the weeds sprinkled artfully among his precious dirt. I snickered under my breath, feeling a wave of satisfaction wash over me like a soft breeze. As the days drifted by, the weekend arrived once again, and this time I noticed a charming transformation take place. Mr. Thompson, it seemed, had become absorbed in his gardening books, creating elaborate plans to weed out not only his lawn, but mine as well. There he was, out with his trowel, meticulously digging among the flowers, whispering sweet nothings to those stubborn little weeds he so despised. I never thought one small act of mischief could lead to such an unexpected outcome. It was almost poetic, really, watching him become engrossed in my garden as if it were his own. And therein lay the beauty of it all. An unintentional camaraderie had sprung forth from my petty revenge. The once drab dialogue between us morphed into quiet exchanges over the fence, where we shared tips on growing flowers, herbs, and, surprisingly, even how to keep the squirrels at bay. It was in those moments that I felt to my core the warmth of connection blossom between us, born out of an improbable situation. Each time we spoke, laughter danced on the air, two neighbors finding common ground within the silly battles of garden care. The days turned into weeks, and soon I found myself looking forward to our shared moments, each one a gentle reminder that sometimes, in the most unexpected scenarios, kindness is found even when revenge was the original intention. The little dirt pile that had caused me so much annoyance had become a bridge, a way to connect with Mr. Thompson, and to appreciate the simplicity of life's little quirks. As evening began to settle in, casting elongated shadows across my garden, I leaned back in my chair, reflecting on the journey of those days. The tea I had once sipped grew cold, but the warmth in my heart only expanded. I realized that I had not only reclaimed my garden, but had also woven a gentle bond that was as nourishing as the soil itself. In that twilight light, I felt grateful for the lessons born from playful mischief and the unexpected joy that had sprouted in my life. The leaves rustled softly as if in agreement, while the last petals of the day began to fall asleep. Inside, I turned off the kitchen light, and everything dimmed into a soft, warm hue. I tucked myself beneath a cozy blanket on the couch, breathing in the remnants of the day, the house quiet and still. Outside, the stars began to twinkle, tiny pinpricks of silver against the deepening blue sky. And as I settled in, I couldn't help but smile at the gentle reminder that sometimes the simplest of interactions could lead to the most profound connections. I took a deep breath, relishing in the peace that enveloped my surroundings. The world felt manageable, friendly even, as I drifted into a soft embrace of sleep, the day's small victories cradling me like a warm, comforting blanket. Take a deep breath, and let's move on to the next one. The golden light of early evening spilled through the kitchen window as I stood by the stove, the gentle bubbling of a pot of soup filling the air with warmth. It was a comforting scent, rich with the earthy notes of vegetables mingling with fragrant herbs, and it hung in the air like a familiar embrace. Outside, the world was painted in hues of pink and orange as the sun dipped lower on the horizon. The sky a canvas being brushed with the soft strokes of dusk. A light breeze stirred the leaves of the old oak tree in the front yard, and I took a moment to breathe in the soft, fading light of the day. I could hear the distant laughter of children playing outside, the sound of their joy drifting through the slightly open window. It reminded me of laughter shared in good company, the kind that wrapped around you like a cozy blanket. The faint clinking of metal against ceramic came from the dining room, where I had set the table for what felt like the 100th time that week. I had invited a few neighbors over for a casual gathering, something to lift our spirits after a long winter, filled with gray days, and weeks that seemed to stretch like old taffy, slow and sticky. As I stirred the soup, I glanced over at the small table beside the window, adorned with mismatched plates and silverware, each item bearing the unique history of its owner. The sight brought a small smile to my face. After all, it was a reflection of our little community. Each neighbor had contributed something, from homemade bread brought by Mrs. Seal Thompson next door, its crust still warm, to Mr. Kim's perfectly baked muffins that looked like little puffs of sunshine. I could already picture the gathering, an evening full of soft conversations, punctuated by shared memories and laughter that echoed through the walls. As the last light of day slipped away, I began to set the pot of soup on the table, breathing in the steam that curled upwards, teasing my senses. Just then, I heard a light knock on the door. It was Rita, the elderly woman who lived 2 doors down. She always had a twinkle in her eye and a gentle smile that seemed to light up the room. I opened the door, the warmth spilling out into the cool evening air. "Evening," she said softly, her voice warm like the soup, a slight tremor in her hands as she held out a small dish. "I brought my famous pasta salad. I hope it's good enough." "No. No." "Oh, Rita, it looks wonderful," I replied, taking the dish from her hands. It was a vibrant mix of colors, cherry tomatoes, basil, and pasta, all drizzled with a lovely olive oil dressing that glittered like stars on a clear night. "Just made it this afternoon," she said, her cheeks pinking as she looked down at the ground, almost shyly. "I could smell your soup from down the street. You always make such good food." "Ninwen." I chuckled softly, a warm feeling washing over me. "Thank you, but I think your pasta salad will be the star tonight. It's like a rainbow in a bowl." "No?" "Oh, dear," she sighed, shaking her head with playful disbelief. "You're too kind." We chatted as she helped me set the rest of the table, her hands moving carefully but with familiarity as she placed the salad down, joining the growing assortment of dishes. I watched her as she talked about her garden, the heirloom tomatoes she had been tending to, their bright red bodies peeking through the green leaves like little jewels waiting to be discovered. She spoke with an infectious enthusiasm that turned each story into a little window into her world. And for a moment, everything felt lighter. Like burdens were being set aside, if only for the evening. Soon the doorbell rang again, and one by one the rest of our neighbors arrived. Mr. Kim, with his signature plaid shirt, brought a basket of muffins, while Mia and Jake, the young couple from across the street, came carrying a pot of fragrant chili. The evening air filled with laughter and warmth as we gathered, our shared stories weaving a tapestry of connection that wrapped around us like a soft shawl. With each plate that was added to the table, the atmosphere grew richer. The table was a feast for the eyes, filled with bright colors and enticing aromas, an invitation for us to sit and share not just food, but pieces of our lives. We settled around the table, and as the first spoonful of soup was served, a gentle harmony settled over the group. Conversations flowed easily, punctuated by the occasional soft laughter that would spill over like a gentle brook. I noticed how Mr. Kim shared jokes with the kids, making them giggle uncontrollably, each peal of laughter like sweet music carrying through the room. Rita shared stories from her childhood, her eyes sparkling as she reminisced about simpler times, and the way her smile lit up when she talked about her late husband was both heartwarming and bittersweet, a reminder of love that echoed through the years. As the evening stretched on, the quiet moments became just as precious as the laughter. I found myself glancing around the table, noticing the small things that made the gathering feel homey, the way Jake absent-mindedly reached for another muffin, or how Mia and Rita leaned in closer when sharing a particularly funny story, their laughter mingling like fine wine. A candle flickered at the center of the table, its soft glow casting a warm hue over our gathering, making every face look soft and inviting. At one point, the conversation lulled, and I could hear the gentle sound of the wind rustling through the trees outside, a soothing backdrop to our little celebration. In that moment, I felt a deep sense of gratitude for the people around me. Here, in this warm cocoon of friendship, I realized we were all a little patchwork quilt, stitched together by the mundane details of life, yet woven intricately into something beautiful. As the night deepened, the air grew cooler, but inside, we were all wrapped in the glow of the candlelight and the warmth of companionship. I leaned back in my chair, my heart full. Perhaps that was the best part of evenings like these, the way they reminded us of the simple joys, the beauty of being surrounded by understanding hearts. Eventually, the plates were nearly empty, and as if on cue, we shared a collective sigh of contentment. I stood up, gathering the empty dishes, but the warmth lingered, like a gentle hug in the fading light. Suddenly, Mia piped up, "What if we made this a monthly thing? We could take turns hosting." Nancho. Great idea. Jake chimed in, his enthusiasm contagious. The others nodded in agreement, and I felt my heart swell even more. As we began to make our goodbyes, the cool night air welcomed them back outside, but my home was untouched by the chill. After the door closed, I wandered back to the kitchen, the remnants of the evening still swirling in my mind. I glanced outside through the window, watching as my neighbors walked away, their silhouettes dancing in the soft streetlight glow, laughter trailing behind them like a comet's tail. I took a moment to simply stand there, in the stillness, feeling the gentle weight of satisfaction settle in my heart. The kitchen was a little messy, but it felt like a beautiful chaos, marked by our shared time and connection. There was a soft warmth in my chest, a reminder that we were not alone in this world. The dishes could wait. I took a deep breath, letting gratitude wash over me, deep and rich like the soup still simmering on the stove. With one last glance outside, I turned off the kitchen light, heading to my room where soft shadows danced across the walls, inviting stillness. As I pulled the blanket up around me, the events of the evening wrapped softly around my thoughts, like a warm embrace, and I let myself sink into the whispers of sleep, cradled by the knowledge that community is a beautiful thing, and in moments like these, there is always a place to come home to, a place filled with laughter, understanding, and kindness. The world outside quieted, and with each breath, I felt myself drifting, lulled by the soft, gentle hum of life continuing on. Even in the dark, let yourself relax as we begin the next story. The warm glow of the kitchen light wrapped around me like a soft blanket as I stood by the countertop, watching the steam rise from my cup of herbal tea. It was a mellow evening, the kind where the day's warmth lingered in the air, and I could hear the faintest hints of crickets starting their nightly song outside. The faint hum of the refrigerator was almost melodic, punctuated now and then by the tapping of raindrops against the window. This wasn't just any evening. It felt like the closure of a chapter, a gentle turning of the page. I could smell the faint aroma of cinnamon and vanilla lingering from the cookies I'd baked earlier. My small, quiet rebellion against the rather bland collection of frozen meals lurking in the back of the freezer. The kitchen table, slightly worn from years of use, was still adorned with the remnants of my baking endeavor. Flour dusting the surface like a light snowfall, a half-finished glass of milk waiting patiently for a cookie or two. As I breathed in the sweet, comforting scents of home, I felt a sense of peace settling in my chest. That evening, I invited my closest friend, Ellie, over for tea and a catch-up. We hadn't had a chance to sit down and talk for what felt like forever, our busy schedules weaving a web of missed plans and scattered messages. I anticipated her arrival, thinking about how it would feel to share stories again, to bask in the warmth of friendship. The sound of her laughter echoed in my mind, the way it would fill the room, wrapping around me like a familiar embrace. Just as I placed the last batch of cookies on the cooling rack, I heard the soft chime of the doorbell. My heart leapt a little, and I smiled to myself, wiping my hands on a dish towel before heading to the door. Ellie stood on the front porch, her hair tousled from the humid air, a soft smile spreading across her face. She greeted me with a warm hug that enveloped me just as the kitchen light had. "Smells amazing in here," she said, stepping inside, her eyes sparkling as they took in the scene. "What's cooking?" "Smells like heaven. Now, dear. Oh, just a little something to sweeten our evening," I replied, gesturing toward the table. "I hope you're hungry." We settled at the table, the cookies and tea between us, and began to chat. As we sipped our steaming mugs, I noticed how time seemed to slow down. The evening light dimmed, casting soft shadows across the room, and the taste of sweet cinnamon danced on my tongue as we exchanged stories from our busy lives, laughing at the small absurdities that life throws our way. I could feel a gentle weight resting on my heart, a bittersweet tug of nostalgia as we reminisced about moments we had shared, our late-night talks, our adventures exploring hidden corners of the town, and the starry skies we had once laid beneath, dreaming of the future. But beneath the laughter, I could sense a shift, a delicate unease that floated between us. Ellie had always been the free spirit, ready to chase her dreams, unfurling her wings to explore the world beyond our small town. I admired her for it, yet as she talked about her plans to move abroad for a year, my heart felt a twinge of something heavier. I wanted the best for her, of course. Who wouldn't? But the thought of her being so far away, of not having her just to drive away, settled like a small stone in my stomach. "Are you sure about it?" I asked gently, picking at the edge of a cookie. The crunch echoed slightly in the hushed room, a reminder of the sweetness mingled with the underlying sadness of the moment. "I mean, a whole year is a long time." "None." Her laughter was soft but tinged with an edge of uncertainty. "I know it's a big decision, but I feel like I just have to do it. It's time for me to take this leap, to see what else is out there." No. The way she spoke about her plans, her eyes shining with excitement and a hint of trepidation, made me both proud and wistful. I could see the longing in her face, the way her dreams hovered just out of reach, and I understood all too well what it felt like to hold on to something precious, while knowing it was time to let it go. We continued our conversation, the cookies slowly disappearing, the tea cooling in our mugs. I told her stories of my own life, my simple routines, and the little joys I found in mundane moments, like watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of pink and orange, or finally mastering the art of making fluffy pancakes. Each word I spoke carried a weight, a subtle acknowledgement of my own fears about the future, about the distance that felt like it might stretch between us once she embarked on her new journey. As the evening wore on, the shadows in the room grew longer, and the world outside faded into a soft, muted hush. I reveled in the comfort of our friendship, the way we could share silence without feeling the need to fill it with words. In those quiet moments, I allowed myself to breathe deeply, to appreciate the warmth of our connection. "What do you do while I'm gone?" Ellie asked, breaking the silence like a delicate ripple in still water. There was a curious glint in her eyes, as if she genuinely wanted to know. I chuckled softly, a little taken aback by the question. "Oh, probably the same old things. Baking, reading, walks by the park. Maybe trying out that new cafe that opened up downtown." Each word felt like a small knot, loosening one by one as I spoke. "I'll just be going through my routines, I suppose, without you to share them with. It's going to feel different." "No," she nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. "But you'll make new memories too, won't you? You've always been great at that." No. Even through the bittersweet veil of our conversation, I felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps this was a chance for us both to grow. As the clock on the wall ticked softly, I realized how late it had grown. The coffee table was now strewn with crumpled napkins and empty mugs, remnants of our laughter echoing around the room. A comfortable silence fell between us, each lost in our thoughts, a shared understanding hanging in the air. In that stillness, I understood something profound. Letting go didn't mean losing someone. Instead, it meant releasing them to fly, while we remained anchored in our own lives, still connected by the threads of friendship that could stretch across distances. I leaned back in my chair, looking at Ellie, and felt a warmth swell in my chest. "You'll be amazing," I assured her softly. "And I'll be right here, cheering you on." Her eyes shimmered with gratitude, and I could see the relief wash over her face. It was then that I understood my place in her journey, just as she would forever hold a space in mine. The conversation shifted again, flowing smoothly like a gentle stream. We spoke of our hopes for the future, the dreams we carried in our hearts, and the adventures that awaited each of us. There was no more weight, no more bittersweet ache, only a shared anticipation of what was yet to come. Eventually, as the night deepened, it was time to say goodbye. I walked Ellie to the door, the gentle rain creating a soft symphony around us. As we embraced, I felt the warmth of her spirit mingling with the cool evening air. "See you soon," I whispered, my voice barely above a murmur, and she smiled. A promise richer than any words could convey. I closed the door behind her, the echo of our laughter still lingering in the air. The house felt peaceful and still as I returned to the kitchen, where the light glowed softly, illuminating the sweet remnants of our evening together. With each step, I relished the warmth of the tea still lingering in my cup, casting aside the worries that had danced in my heart earlier. In this cozy sanctuary, with the soft sound of raindrops providing a soothing backdrop, I felt a gentle shift within me. I poured the last of the tea into the sink and wiped the table clean, the scent of cinnamon still mingling in the air, a sweet reminder of the love and warmth shared. As I turned off the kitchen light and headed toward my bedroom, I took a moment to savor the stillness. The world outside faded away, replaced by a quiet comfort that wrapped around me like a thick, warm blanket. I climbed into bed, feeling the soft sheets embrace me, and allowed my eyes to flutter closed, breathing in the echoes of connection, of friendship that could stretch across any distance. In that tranquil space, I surrendered to the gentle rhythm of my heartbeat, to the comforting knowledge that while we might be apart, the love and laughter we shared would continue to light the way. As I drifted off to sleep, I held on to that warmth, a promise that tomorrow would bring new adventures and connections, reminding me that letting go could also mean opening our hearts wider. Here's another story to drift off to. The old kitchen had a charm that could only be cultivated over time, nestled in the heart of a small town that felt like it was frozen in a pleasant moment. The walls were a soft butter yellow, and the wooden cabinets were painted white, chipped slightly at the corners from years of family gatherings. I remember the gentle hum of the refrigerator mingling with the distant sound of rain tapping against the window, a soothing cadence that filled the room with a quiet sort of magic. The scent of freshly baked apple pie hung in the air, mingling with the faint smell of cinnamon that had settled into the linens since the last family gathering years ago. A well-loved recipe, passed down through generations, was a silent witness to laughter and stories told over steaming cups of tea. The kitchen table, an old oak slab, stood firmly in the center, its surface marred with the scratches and etchings of family secrets and memories. Every groove told a story, and it felt like the kind of place that could hold 1,000 stories, waiting to be whispered into the night. As I stirred the pot of simmering apple filling, a familiar sound echoed softly in the hall. The creak of the floorboards, a reminder of the people who used to fill this space with chatter and life. I had invited my sister, Eliza, over after many years of silence between us. I could still remember our last encounter, filled with heat and hurt, words thrown like sharpened stones, cutting deep. But now, in this warm kitchen, I hoped for something different. The pie was a gesture, a bridge across the gap between our hearts. Eliza arrived right on time, just as dusk draped its soft blue shroud over the world. The rain had lessened to a gentle drizzle, and I noticed a few small droplets racing down the window panes, like tiny travelers in search of home. When she stepped inside, the air shifted slightly. She looked older, but not in a bad way. There was a softness to her features and a calmness that hadn't been there before. "Wow, it smells amazing in here," she said, offering a tentative smile. It was a small thing, but it felt monumental. "Thank you," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady, though a flutter of uncertainty danced in my belly. "I made your favorite pie." Her eyebrows lifted in surprise, and for a moment it was like old times. Memories of autumn kitchens, laughter, mixed with the scent of baked goods, flooded back to us. "You remembered," she murmured, stepping closer to the counter, drawn in by the warmth of the pie. With each slice I cut, the sound of the knife against the wooden board seemed to fill the gaps between us, a soothing rhythm softening the air. The pie was still warm, the steam curling up and adding a touch of fog to the cozy kitchen. I served her a slice on a delicate dish, the kind that had belonged to our grandmother. It felt significant, as if I were offering not just a piece of dessert, but also a piece of our shared history. Eliza took her first bite, and I watched, holding my breath. Her eyes closed momentarily, and a smile crept across her lips, one tinged with nostalgia. "It's just like I remember," she said, her voice slightly muffled by the sweetness of the apple and the buttery crust. The tension in the room eased just a little more. I poured us both cups of tea. The gentle clinking of the ceramic against the countertop punctuated our silence. I could feel the warmth of the liquid curling around my hands, grounding me. The steam curled up into the air, carrying with it quiet hopes and unspoken words. We settled at the table, and as the minutes slipped by, we spoke of small things: the weather, our favorite books, and the latest happenings around town. I was careful in choosing my words, aware of the fragile thread connecting us. There was a moment when we both laughed over a shared memory of Dad's terrible attempts at cooking. I could see the walls around Eliza's heart soften, just a little. The laughter broke through the heavy silence of years gone by. But then, just as I felt we were starting to find our way back to each other, a shadow passed through her eyes, and I could sense the thoughts swirling just beneath the surface. I took a sip of my tea, letting the warmth wash over me as I summoned the courage to tread into deeper waters. "Do you remember that summer we spent at Grandma's?" I asked quietly. "You, me, and the garden? I think we spent more time trying to catch fireflies than actually gardening." "No." A soft smile flickered on her face, and I could see a light there. "How could I forget?" she replied, her voice tinged with wistfulness. "You always caught more than I did." "Maybe because I wasn't afraid of the dark," I teased gently, trying to pull her into the memory with a lightness that felt appropriate. She chuckled softly, her laughter ringing like a bell in the stillness, and then the moment stretched, silence wrapping around us like a comfortable blanket. "But, really," I continued, leaning in slightly, "I've missed those moments. I've missed you, Eliza." I hesitated, feeling the weight of the words in the air. "I want us to find our way back if you're willing." She looked down at her tea, her fingers tracing the rim of the cup. I could see the gears turning in her mind, the reflections of years of distance passing through her eyes. "I've missed you too," she said softly, a catch in her voice. But it didn't feel like it could go back to how it was. It was complicated. Her honesty hung in the air, a stillness settling between us, bringing the unresolved threads into focus. The clock on the wall ticked softly, the only sound as I took a breath, feeling the weight of all that had happened. The misunderstandings, the hurt, the silence that had stretched like a chasm. "I know," I replied, my heart aching with the realization. "But maybe we could start somewhere small. I don't expect everything to be resolved overnight. Just Being here feels like a good step. Then now. We sat in that shared space, the warmth of the kitchen wrapping around us, and I could feel her contemplating my words. I took another sip of tea, the warmth grounding me, and we let the quiet fill the gaps, like a soft blanket, each moment becoming more precious. There was something soothing about the play of shadows as the kitchen light flickered softly above us, the rain continuing its gentle serenade against the windows, a reminder of life moving forward, even in uncertainty. After a while, Eliza spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. So, if we're going to do this, I think I'll need to start by learning to trust again. Trust that it's okay to be together without worrying about the past. Nine. Wow. An understanding passed between us. I smiled gently, the corners of my mouth lifting with sincerity. And I'll be patient. I promise. No, yes. We settled into the evening, the hushed sounds of the rain creating a rhythm for our conversation. It was slow and deliberate, a stirring of the emotions that hadn't been attended to for far too long. We spoke of our lives since we last saw each other, careers, friendships, and the mundane details of life that suddenly felt vibrant and essential in the exchange. The atmosphere shifted toward something lighter, and as the minutes turned to hours, I could feel hope blossoming. There was joy in the discovery of each other once again, even amidst the remnants of past grievances. As night deepened, the kitchen glowed softly with warmth, and the aroma of pie lingered in the air, reminding us that reconciliation could be as sweet and simple as a shared dessert. Eventually, our laughter faded into a comfortable silence. The pie was nearly gone, each bite shared like a bridge towards an easier connection. I noticed the way Eliza seemed more at ease, her shoulders less tense, a soft smile playing on her lips as she gazed out the window at the rain, which now fell in a steady rhythm. I guess it's like the rain, she mused quietly, almost to herself. It brings with it the chance for new growth, doesn't it? Yes, it does, I replied softly, feeling the warmth of understanding settle in around us both. And so, we drifted into easy conversation again, the kind that wraps around you like a favorite sweater, comforting and familiar. We spoke of dreams, jokes half remembered, and the simple joy of sharing a moment. The kitchen glowed softly, and as the hours slipped by like the light peeking through the drawn curtains, I could sense that we'd found something worth holding on to. The gentle beginnings of what we hoped could be a renewed connection. Feeling warm and grateful, I looked around the room, now cozy with the soft sounds of rain and quiet laughter hanging in the air. I could barely keep my eyes open as we wrapped up the evening. A soft hush fell over our words, and I savored every detail of this moment, knowing it was the start of something promising. Finally, I rose to wash the dishes, the gentle clatter of plates and mugs echoing in the stillness. Eliza joined me, and as we worked side by side, I felt a sense of peace settle within me. A quiet resolution that spoke of kindness and the gentle mending of hearts. As I turned off the last light, the kitchen fell into a soft shadow, the only sound now the gentle patter of the rain against the window. I felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over me. I had opened a door, and Eliza had stepped through, just as the night wrapped around us like a comforting embrace. I took a moment to breathe in the calming scent of home, and I knew that, no matter the challenges ahead, we had found a way to be together again. I could feel the weight of years begin to lift, replaced by the warmth of connection, a quiet hope unfurling within my heart as I closed my eyes and welcomed the stillness of the night. And that's the last story for tonight. You've traveled a long way to get here, through 10 quiet worlds, 10 small lives, 10 gentle resolutions. Your breathing is slower now. Your body is heavy and warm. There's nothing left to think about. Just the quiet. Just the dark. Just rest.